Today, I'm joined by Phillip Wilson. Phil is CEO of LRI Consulting Services and the founder of Approachable Leadership. He is a nationally recognized expert in leadership, labor relations, and building positive workplaces with features and outlets like Fox Business, Fast Company, Bloomberg, and the New York Times. Phil is a respected keynote speaker and the author of several books, including the Leader-Shift Playbook, 4 simple changes to score big and unleash your team's potential. He's testified before Congress on labor issues, practiced law at a national firm, and served as a human resources director early in his career. I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his expertise. So, Phil, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, and I'm excited to talk about the work that you're doing. But first of all, I mentioned in the introduction that you started Approachable Leadership. You're the founder of it. What is the idea of approachable leadership and approachability?
Well, that book, I've got a book called the Approachability Playbook, and sort of the genesis of that book, John, was I was kind of searching myself for like what was I'm kind of a nerd, as you might tell. So like what's that one ring of leadership? What is I worked with lots of leaders and I've been eyewitness to lots of leadership train wrecks in my career. And I was asking the question, like, what is the difference between someone who is going to succeed as a leader and someone who's going to fail? And my gut was that there was kind of a foundational behavior that was the key. And I spent, quite a while researching. I drove my clients crazy because I would ask anyone who would talk to me like what their theory was. And eventually I landed on this foundational principle of approachability. And approachability, what it means to me and the way we define it, is a leader is creating that like right space where people feel safe and comfortable coming to them. There's an understanding component to that, which we call right feeling. And then there's also do you walk your talk, the support component of it. And so that's right action. So those are the three sort of elements of approachability. And the bottom line to it, though, is just you behave in a way that your team feels safe and comfortable coming to you, whether they've got a concern or an issue or a problem, a suggestion, a way that things could be different. Like they feel safe coming to you.
Hmm. Yeah, you hear oftentimes that a leader has an open door policy. Well, you know, they might have the door open, but they don't want to really be interrupted, right? So to your point, you say, right space, right feeling, right action. You could have the right you could have the right space, but not the right feeling. Like,
Yeah.
maybe I got the door open, but I'm not very approachable. I'm gruff. I react negatively to bad news, what have you, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I talk about in that same book. I've got this example of do you have a welcome mat or a mat that says go away? So your door can be open, but like if just like you said, if when you walk into that door, I like roll my eyes or I'm like, oh, and you're an interruption to me, that's not approachable. And there's different ways that plays out, right? It's your physical behavior. It's I don't listen to you. I tell you what I want you to hear, but like I'm not actually asking your opinion about things. I can do those first two things really well, but then if I don't do what I say I'm going to do and don't follow through on what we agreed I would do based on what you told me, that's you might as well just be a jerk at the beginning because you're not trustworthy at that point. So you have to fill all three of those buckets to be not just approachable, but to be a truly good leader.
Hmm. And what are some advantages of being an approachable leader?
Yeah, we have in the back of that same book. It's not a long book, but it's pretty packed with stuff. So at the very back of that book, we talk about the ROI of being an approachable leader. So it absolutely transforms, and not just your work relationships. These principles apply in every relationship that you have, but there's a lot of research, both research that other people have done and research that we have done. You have much higher satisfaction. You have much lower turnover. That there's a lot of dollars associated with that. Higher quality and productivity. There's a bunch of advantages that leaders that are approachable have, and companies that have approachable leaders, advantages they have over companies that don't.
I love that. I love it. I know, my first manufacturing plant, I was the youngest plant manager in that plant's history, and
Mhm.
I had, was a military veteran, and I came off a submarine where we were close with everyone because it was a submarine, right?
Right.
But I noticed, like, when I came to my first manufacturing plant, it was like the us and them of salary people and hourly people, and nobody really knew the general manager. He was in the corner office and he sort of did his thing, and everyone else did their thing. And so I was like, how do we connect everyone together? And so one of the things I did was a thing called Fridays on the Floor, where I would actually work on the shop floor for the first Friday of every month in different departments.
Mhm.
And what it helped was, like, I got to know the team, they got to know me, and they also got to see that I was just a normal human being. I wasn't
Yeah.
anything special, and I think that helped us build rapport, to where I sort of got the inside scoop of what was really going on versus, what was people were telling me was going on. I think it was a really important thing that I did. And I did that throughout my career when I work on the shop floor, just so I get to know people.
I think that's such a great practice, and whether that like that's a really like terrific way to do it because you're rolling up your sleeves and you're doing the work alongside the team. That's really powerful, but it also breaks down that whole barrier. That it's very easy for even supervisors, so people levels between the general manager and the frontline supervisor. It's super easy when a decision gets made. They just go, well, look, I don't agree with this, but that's what John said we had to do. And if they see you and you're around, and maybe like that week you're working alongside them, they feel comfortable asking you, right? and
Yeah.
and or hey, I didn't really like that decision, like, what, explain what you were thinking there. And that is those conversations are really, really powerful. And then by you doing that, you're also setting the example. No other leader in that organization is going to be able to kind of stand back and go, well, look, that's not, I don't do the work on the line, because they can point to well, the general manager does.
Mm.
So, if we need help, like, you should jump in and help. So it sets a really great example there as well. Super approachable behavior, I would say.
Yeah, I think it was something. Well, I was trying to eliminate the us and them
Mhm.
attitude in the business, and it turns out there was, like, we all became one team throughout. It took several years, but
So
in that, yeah,
can I, if you don't mind, I want to interview you
yeah,
for a second.
absolutely.
I'm curious about this. So did you, well, like, were there supervisors or mid-level managers who are, they worked in this more hierarchical, how did they feel about that? And did you get pushback, or maybe
Yeah.
did somebody leave because they're like,
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was tough because what I would do is I'd gather all the managers after I would work on the shop floor, and I'd
Mhm.
buy lunch, and I'd talk about what I learned out there. And what I recognized is that their excitement level wasn't the same as mine
Mhm.
because they hadn't witnessed it. So over time, we made Fridays on the floor mandatory for all managers and supervisors. So then it became just part of our culture. So every Friday, we all worked in different parts. First Friday of every month, we'd work in different places on the shop floor to build that. And then we would still come back for lunch. And so we would do it for 4 hours in the morning, come back
Mhm.
for lunch, and we would talk about what we learned and what needs to be fixed. And it was very powerful. Yeah.
Would you rotate, like, so I know you rotated departments. Would you have supervisors like work in different departments than the ones that you supervise?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It was
really,
great.
really good practice. I don't think I've ever heard of that. Like, so, and
Yeah.
you can tell by, how gray my beard is. Like, I've been doing this a long time. I don't think we used to do breakfast with the general manager
Mm.
at when I was the HR director at the casino, and that's one that I recommend. It's really important to eat with people. But working alongside and like doing their job for a few hours a month is really powerful.
Yeah, it was later on Undercover Boss, the show came out, and I was
Mhm.
thinking, oh, I was doing that long
Yeah.
before long before that came out. So, but it's a great idea. We called it Fridays on the Floor, and it was just a really powerful thing and again, I was a new plant manager, so try something new.
Yeah,
So,
sure. No, that's great.
so in that the approachability side of things, you talk about a thing called power distance. What is
Mhm.
that?
Yeah. So power distance, it was studied a long time ago by Hofstede. Actually, Geert Hofstede and his son did a lot of this research. And they were really looking more like IBM had hired them to look at sort of uh, different power relationships in different cultures around the world.
Yep.
And that research proved out that different cultures have different relationships to people in power. And there's some cultures where you would never you would never buck your elders, or you would never, you would be very like respectful to people in authority. And then there's other cultures where that's not the case, where you feel safe to confront somebody who's in a higher power position to you. So that's true. But one of the things that I've learned over the years is that it's way bigger than just culture, right? So like each of us has a different relationship to people in power, and that can be wide or narrow. The simple example I use is, like if your cell phone rang and it's your kid's principal at school, like what's your first reaction? And it's probably not, oh my gosh, student of the month finally. So like that's a reaction to power. The police car behind you flashes their lights, right? Whatever that feeling is that you have, that's how you respond in certain power situations. And so when you're a leader in a company, you have that same, there's a power relationship between you and the folks that you lead. And that can be wide or it can be narrow. And what we teach is that it's really important for that to be as narrow a gap as possible. And the reason for that is when you experience wide power distance, then that's triggering your fight or flight response. You are more concerned about their authority, the fact that they could fire you, the fact that they could punish you. And when you feel that way, and this happens subconsciously, you are going to behave differently. You're not going to be comfortable. You physically won't be comfortable. You will sometimes, you see that boss walking down the aisle, and you're going to find a place to hide. So there's this physical discomfort. You're not going to tell them what you think. You're going to try to figure out what do they think and try to tell them what you think they want to hear. You'll behave differently. You'll say, "Oh yeah, sure, I can do that," even though you have no idea how to do it, but you are scared to tell them, "I don't know how to do it." So there's all of these negative behaviors that happen. And when we teach the course on approachability, we share examples. One of the examples that we share, John, is the USS Fitzgerald, where there's all kinds of what we call these like 10-second moments that if you create the right environment, if I see something that's going wrong, like I feel safe and comfortable, calling the captain and going, we got to do something different. But if that's not the environment, you're going to avoid that call. You're going to you don't want to look dumb in front of your peers. So you're going to make decisions and take actions that ultimately can lead to tragic consequences. So it's really important for leaders to understand you want that gap to be as narrow as possible.
I love that. I know I've read some of the research around hospitals. I guess it's a big issue inside, like, for example, surgeons and nurses, when they see mistakes being made, they're afraid to speak up because the surgeon has this air of authority and they've gone to all this school. And so they don't want to question it. And so part of one of the areas they've tried to do to improve safety inside hospitals is try to reduce that power distance between the people that are in the operating room and these surgeons who, have all this training. Yeah.
I don't know if you've read the Checklist Manifesto, but that's one of the books that we talk about. But one of the things that's on that checklist, the very first thing on that checklist, which reduced mortality in WHO surgeries by like 50%. It was massively improved. And it's a really simple checklist. But the very first thing on that checklist is that the surgical team, before they do the surgery, they introduce themselves to each other and explain, like, this is the role that I am going to play in the surgery, as a way to shrink. They don't use the words, but that is a very important behavior around reducing power distance. You going to work on the floor next to your team, that shrinks power distance.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Such a great important point. So I'm glad we brought that up, because I don't think we talk about that too much. Is this, and I'll often say that we we affect situation just by our presence, right? As leaders, right? We show up in a room and everybody stops talking. Well, that's a problem, right? So if someone asked me, I had a student ask me one time, how do you know? I said, how do I know if I'm a good leader? I said, well, if you walk in a room and everybody shuts up, I said, well, you probably have some work to do, right? Is that they're worried about you. They're not sharing what's really going on,
Yeah.
and that's that power distance, right?
Yeah, if you never hear bad news like that, that's one of the red flags. I talk about these red flags and how you can assess, yourself as a leader, but that's one of the red flags. Like you only hear good news. Okay, well that we just talked before we came on, right? Like pretty much every day there's some sort of bad news, like in the
Right, right.
manufacturing environment or healthcare or you name it. So if you're only hearing good news, that means people don't want to tell you what's actually going on.
Mm.
If you don't get a lot of feedback from people or suggestions or things like that, that's a signal. And then the other thing I teach, it's very simple. Leadership is both hard and not hard, right? So if you think of the service that you're providing as a leader, right? Your leadership is like your service. Okay. Well, every business in America that has customers, they ask their customers, how are we doing? You
Mm.
know, like that net promoter question. Given like what we did the last order that we fulfilled for you, how likely are you to buy from us again? Why don't we do that as leaders, right? Based on my supervision over the last 30 days, would you come back to work in this department and work with me, right? Do some customer service polling of your team and get them comfortable giving you feedback about what should I keep doing, what should I stop doing, what should I do more of. Like those are really simple things that you can do. And then some people aren't going to feel safe going back to power distance, right? Like they're not going to tell you the truth right up front because they don't believe you that you really want them to give feedback. So you're going to need to do the survey on a pretty regular basis. But after a while, they're going to go, well, maybe if I tell them the truth, they'll stop coming up and asking me. But like, you want to create that shrunk power distance so that people will tell you what they're actually thinking.
Mm. So powerful. So now you have a new book out called The Leader-Shift Playbook. It came out in April of 2025. Now, why did you feel that this book needed to be written now?
Well, I wrote it like 3 times. So the timing of the publication was based a lot more on it took me a while to get it all out there. The point of the book, and one of the most important things that I teach in this book that I didn't really talk about in the approachability playbook is this idea of the hero assumption.
Mm.
And the hero assumption is simply, you believe that your teammates want to be great and you don't have you don't have an option of any other belief. And there's all kinds of research, and you can probably think of plenty of examples where that belief, if you make instead of making the hero assumption, if you make the villain assumption, I don't think this person wants to be great. I think this person wants to do their 8 and skate. I don't think that they care about their work. Your behavior, the way you talk to them, the way you're going to respond when they enter the room, all of that changes, and it changes based on your belief in them, not necessarily anything that they've actually done. And we've all had this experience where we have, there's people on our team that we're like, man, they really want to do great. They're a really hard worker. They're one of my best employees. And then if they make a mistake, we're like, oh yeah, that's no big deal. They'll recover. When there's this other person on your team that when they make the mistake, you're immediately like, oh, there they go again. That's just they're never going to be good. And when you behave like that, you actually create
Mm.
that behavior. And if you believe in somebody, and even if they are struggling, you tell them, I think you've got what it takes. I am willing to invest in you. I like working with you. If you can express that to them, they will rise to the occasion.
Mm.
And it happens over and over again. And one of the ways I prove that is it's like anyone who is a leader has had someone in their life who had that belief about them. And if I ask you, you'll start thinking of the people that like they believed in you even when you didn't believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Those are people that made the hero assumption about you. And you have to do that if you're going to be a successful leader. That's one of the most important things I wanted to write about that really didn't make it in the first book.
I absolutely love that. It's a little bit of that self-fulfilled prophecy, right? That if it's how you label somebody is sort of how you approach them. And it reminds me, I had a young sailor who was a problem. One
Mhm.
thing I talk about is when you go out to sea on a submarine, you lock the hatches and you're stuck with the crew that you deploy with, right? You're not
That's the
firing
key.
anybody.
Right.
You got to make do with what you have. And I had a sailor who was always constantly getting in trouble, and I could have labeled him the villain, right? And because he was my problem child.
Yeah.
But one of the things, I spent time with him and just I recognized that he was really brilliant and he was bored. And so every time he was bored, he'd get himself into trouble. And
Wow.
it was a boredom thing. And I realized if I could use his intelligence and his energy towards other things, like I put him in charge of training our reactor operators. Every new reactor operator had to go through him. I put him in charge of like the toughest maintenance projects because he could troubleshoot any electronic issue. And then suddenly he was busy and he was adding value to the team, and he went from my worst sailor to my best sailor. And it was just, but it was sort of like, in a way, sort of changing the label on him to say, okay, he's my worst sailor, he's my problem child. But
Mhm.
then spending some time saying, like, trying to figure out like why. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes we don't do that oftentimes, because we can fire somebody, in a regular job, but on a submarine you can't. So it was like I was stuck and had to try to figure it out.
I I love that. I mean, amazing story, first of all, but also that idea of, you know, you have the escape hatch in a
Mm,
regular, like in a manufacturing environment, you can terminate somebody, right?
right.
But like if you're if you're trying to build good leaders, you should almost take that escape hatch away. It's like,
Mm,
you're not gonna, no, we're not firing them. You're gonna go figure out how to turn this individual around. Because that's how I mean, you learned a lot as a leader by going through that experience, right? And
yeah.
that made you a better leader by going through that. I love that. That's a great story. But that is the hero assumption, and
Yeah.
it works. I mean, it absolutely works.
So, what are some ways that leaders kind of get in their own way, in sort of their own behaviors can sort of mess them up?
Yeah. Well, anything that you're doing that's expanding power distance, right? So if you
Mm,
think about what are the
yeah.
sorts of things that increase power distance, so that would be, sort of leading. It's not really leading, but like managing from the point of like I'm the boss,
Mm,
and do what I say, and sort of leaning into your authority versus leaning into your relationships. So that's one big failure. I mean, I think a lot of it is not going back to this sort of, doing your own customer service, like not wanting hard feedback, not wanting people to tell you what they think. It's very natural to want to avoid conflict and want to avoid, bad news. It's almost something you really have to kind of practice. And we do an exercise in our workshop where, we have you pick behaviors that you think you're good at, and then pick
mm,
some behaviors you think you're bad at. But then we pair you up with a partner, and we have your partner do the same thing, and they tell you things that they think that you could improve on. It's not, it's not, most people, it's not their natural place to be. So you really have to encourage that. So that's kind of that humility. So lack of humility, it increases power distance. uh, Leading from a place, or concentrating most on your authority versus your relationships, that increases power distance. Those are a couple of examples, and we've talked about some of the red flags, right? How do you know whether or not you're doing a good job? Well, do people give you feedback? Do people
yeah.
tell you things that you could improve on? Do people come to you with suggestions like that? Those are really easy ways to evaluate yourself as a leader, but like don't wait for that. Just go ask people.
I love that. Like you mentioned, like to be able to accept feedback and to seek feedback requires a level of humility, which
Mhm.
often we struggle at sometimes as leaders to do, because the other side of us is we're supposed to be confident. We're supposed to be, and we've been given a role because someone above us felt like we could do this role. So we have some sort of level of confidence. And so there's this, I guess there's two sides of the coin. One is we have to be confident as a leader that we're confident in ourselves that we can accomplish what we've been set out to do, but humble enough to listen to feedback to get better, right? And so how do we, it's like almost that's a hard thing to balance sometimes, I think, for leaders.
I mean, the story I tell in the new book, the Leader-Shift book, is about my own growth as a leader. So I was flying around the country, teaching people about how to be approachable and all this stuff that I just was talking about. In my own company, I was not that leader, and I had a conversation with someone who's a key person who ended up becoming basically our COO. But when I offered her this position, we started implementing. There's an orange binder right behind me, right there. We implemented EOS, and entrepreneurial operating system is what it's based on a book called Traction. We are definitely big fans of that. But when I asked Debbie on our team to be our integrator in that transition, she said, "Well, I feel like I need to tell you something. I told your dad, who owned the business before me. I told your dad he could not retire until I was ready to retire because I would never work for Phil."
Mm.
And I had no idea she felt that way. We're a small company, and I'd worked with her for years. So, like, shame on me. And it was a gift to have somebody who was willing to give me that feedback. Like, it was a great gift. It definitely like altered my course as a leader. I knew what to do, right? I was teaching everybody
Right.
in all over the place what to do, but I wasn't doing it. And we worked through that. She decided to be the integrator. I literally had to agree that she could remove me from the leadership team if I wasn't following through on the things that I said that I was going to do. And we really became a great team together. But it required me to be open to that feedback, and then the gift of her giving me the feedback was also really important.
Mm. Yeah, I think, like I said, I think sometimes we think we're doing well, right?
Mhm.
And we think that we're doing everything. We think we're the hero of the story, right? But
Yeah.
and so sometimes getting that feedback that we're not, right, is hard to hear. And I
Yeah.
think there's two ways we can approach it. One way is to ignore it, right, and just say, "Oh, what they don't know what they're talking about. I'm a great leader. I'm doing great things." Well, the other side of it, like you did, which is sort of take a humble approach and say, "All right, maybe there's some truth to it," and
Mhm.
sort of spend some time, doing some soul searching. And as you mentioned, when you do that and you do take that to heart, you end up becoming a better leader because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was transformative for me personally. It transformed our culture here. We were not like it wasn't like this was a terrible place to work. And Debbie had worked here for, a decade, at that point, or close to it. And so we were, you would have described us as like a family, environment, but we were a little bit, we kind of put the fun in dysfunctional. So we weren't all on the same page. And I'm like a shiny object, sort of visionary. I'm like doing all kinds of stuff. I get the team going this direction, and then I decide, oh, this is cool, and now they're going this direction. And there was no like rhyme or reason to it. And so that was very disruptive. And I was also on the road a lot. I still am. And so then I would like come in as a hurricane and blow around for a little bit and then leave. And it was just an unhealthy. It was a okay culture to like work in, but we were not working well, and that's because of me. And once I was willing to, first of all, delegate a lot of things to the rest of the team, I was willing to like get into my box and start trying to focus on the things that I do best. Uh, that and then we grew. The leadership team grew, and now we had even more capacity and more capability because folks were being asked to step up and they were stepping up. And I tell several hero assumption stories in the book, but like we transformed the culture here by again by doing the things that we were teaching other people to do.
I love that. I love that. I know one time I was approached by, it was in that same plant management job, my first plant management job. I had one of my I thought my most trusted leader work, one of my managers working for me. And he said, John, we love working for you. He said, but you never take a rest. We reach new goals and you're always off to the next,
Mhm.
off to the next objectives. Can you just give us a little time to settle in with this new level before you go pursuing the next
Mhm.
one? And it was good feedback because I was just running as fast as I could go. And sometimes I think as a leader, we have to stop and turn around and see if anyone's following. Right.
Yeah, right.
And if no one's following, maybe we're too far out in front, or maybe we've zigged too many times, and our people can't keep up with us. And I think that was really good feedback you got because it helped you sort of rein yourself in to say, like you said, what is it that I'm really good at, and what can I contribute to this company, more than anything.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it just gave us a process. So like there's it's just we're running a system. We all agree that this is what our meeting cadence is going to be. This is how we're going to set our goals. This is how we're so that it's systematized. And this process isn't magic. Like it's kind of, as long as you've got a system. I love this one in particular, but like there's other systems you can run. But the key thing is having having a process, having a place where people can give you feedback, where you're asking for it, where you are you're getting everyone on the same page, you're all marching the same direction, it makes sense. We have a lot of transparency, so everybody knows how we're doing in terms of like our delivery of our consulting services, what's our revenue look like, what's our cash position look like. So we're very transparent with the team about how we're doing. And then people just feel safer and way more comfortable in an environment like that. And because we're always talking about that stuff, there's discussions that you would have never had before that people feel comfortable about because like they're in it, right? They see
Mm.
it. We're asking constantly, like, what issues do we need to solve next?
I love it. Yeah, it's great. I think when you have that transparency, then everyone can sort of contribute to the success. I think we're living in a time where the ideas of one person are not good enough to solve the problems we have
Right.
in our companies. We need a collective source. But if you don't have a way to have transparency about what's happening in the organization, right? If the information is all concentrated with one person, then it's hard to get everybody involved. So I think that's
Yeah.
what make these EOS systems and systems like that are really powerful for getting the
Yeah.
team, everybody pulling on the rope, right? Not just
Mhm.
one or two people. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, this has been fantastic, Phil. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners right now?
I mean, if I had a giant billboard, it would be, well, we say one of two things. I would either say, be approachable, or make the hero assumption. Those are kind of like the two big ones. And yeah, that if try to do those two things, you're gonna really, I promise you will be a better leader.
I would agree, and I've made some of those mistakes in my career, and I've learned how to do some of those things in my career as well. And so I think that's powerful advice that Phil gives you. Those are great. It's a great message. Phil, how can our listeners find out more about you, the work you do, and this latest book called The Leader-Shift Playbook?
Two ways are the easiest. I'm LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn, and my team, we produce a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So that's just linkedin.com/PB Wilson. I joined it really early, so yeah, that's my LinkedIn handle. The other place, if you're interested in the book and you can learn about other books, you can go to yourleadershift.com. So those are kind of the two easiest places to start. We're on Amazon and other places, but those are two easy places to start.
Well, fantastic. And we're going to put links in the show notes for all of Phil's resources. And I highly encourage you to reach out to Phil if you got a question. If something about this conversation sparks something inside of you, maybe that you're thinking of your people as villains, and maybe you've got to change it to heroes. Maybe you've got too big of a power distance, or maybe you're only hearing good news every day. Well, this is the book that's going to change your thinking on it. The Leadership Playbook and the other books that Phil has written are going to help you think about those things to make it a better environment for you and your team. So I highly recommend that you follow the links that are in the show notes and get this book, the Leader-Shift Playbook. I have to say that 9 times to get it right. So please do that, because you're going to be better off if you do. Phil, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing the things you've learned along the way, and thank you for writing them down in a book in a place that we can get to it and we can learn from your experiences. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Thank you again. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.